Welcome to this comprehensive tutorial series on building a robust and feature-rich blog platform using Spring Boot and Angular. This project aims to provide a hands-on learning experience in full-stack development, covering both backend and front-end technologies. By the end of this series, you will have a complete blog platform where user can create, edit, add, and view comments. So it's having a 5 objective for building a blog platform using Spring Boot and Angular. So what you are going to learn for this one? So first of all, you are gain actually practical experience in developing a full stack web application. Also, you are able to understand that how to create a RESTful API using Spring Boot. You can also understand that how you are going to integrate an Angular frontend with a Spring Boot backend. You can also implement user authentication and authorization to secure your application with Spring Security. In this session also I'm going to build a responsive and user-friendly interface using CSS and Angular. Now we will talk about the key features of this application. So first point is to create, edit and view post, means user can manage their blog post through a user-friendly interface. User can also do comment on a post and also view the comments. Next is the ensure that application works seamlessly across various devices. So now we will talk about that what are the tools and technologies we are going to use for developing this blog application system. So as a backend, we are going to use this Spring Boot, Spring Data JPA and Spring Securities. As a frontend, we are going to use this Angular, TypeScript and Angular CLI. As a database, where we are using the database for storing the data. So for storing the data, we are going to use this MySQL database. And for the development tools, like you can use the IntelliJ IDE, or maybe you can use the Eclipse or Visual Studio Code and Node.js. So these are the tools and technologies that we're going to use while we are developing this application. Before starting this tutorial, you should have a basic understanding of Java and Spring framework. You should be familiar with Java programming and Spring basis. Next, also you need to have the basic knowledge of JavaScript and the TypeScript for as a front-end wise. And also you need to understanding of web development fundamentals. Now we will talk about the project structure. So as a project, there is a two part. One is the backend, another one is the front end. As a backend technologies, we are going to use the Spring Boot. So while we are developing this block management system, so as a backend, we need to follow some kind of architecture design, you can say. So first one is the entities. We need to define the data models for storing the post, comment and the user, right? We need to store all the details into the backend. So to mapping those things, we need to create some model in a backend. So that is called the entities. Next one is the repositories. So repositories is responsible for the database operations. Like if we want to save the data or fetch the data or delete the data, so this kind of operation we can do using the repositories. Next one is the service layer. So this is basically responsible to implement the code or the business logic for managing the post, comments and the user. So the business logic will be taken care by this service layer. And the next one is the controller. So this controller is the basically RESTful APIs to handle the HTTP request. Means whenever any request will come from the frontend, then those requests will come into the controller. So then we need to write this kind of controller to handling those HTTP requests. Now if we will talk about the backend frontend technologies, so as a frontend we are using the Angular. So here we need to first of all defining the component. So what is the responsibility of this one? Like it's basically build the UI components for post listing, post details and the post creation. What the service actually, it will the main the purpose of this one to interact with the backend APIs, and the routing is only the responsibility to navigation between different views. Like we need to navigate from here to there, so for that this routing is needed. And the styling, as you can understand, this is actually apply the CSS for a clean and responsive design. Now we will talk about that how you can ready your development environment. For that you need to install some required software into your system. So first of all you need to install JDK into your system. How you are going to download? You can download the latest JDK from the Oracle website. Also follow the installation instruction specific to your operating system. Next, you need to set the java_home environment variable and add the JDK bin directory to your system path. For regarding the Spring Boot, so Spring Boot doesn't require a separate installation as it is a framework within the Spring ecosystem. We will use the Spring Initializer to generate a Spring Boot project which will include the necessary dependencies. Next, we need to talk about the Node.js and the Angular CLI. So for the Node.js, you need to download the latest stable version of Node.js from the official website. Follow the installation instruction for your operating system. Verify the installation by running node-v and npm-v in your terminal. If you get the version of the node, that means you can understand that Node.js and the CLI is installed into your system successfully. For the Angular CLI, use the npm package to install Angular CLI globally by running npm install -g @Angular CLI. Next, you need to install the development ID, means any IDE. So you can install the either IntelliJ or maybe you can use the Eclipse, whatever you like you can install from the website. Alternatively, you can also use the Visual Studio Code, which is lightweight and highly customizable. So you can install the Visual Studio Code also. So these are the required software for developing this block management system, so that you can you need to just to ready your development environment, you need to keep in mind that these are the necessary dependencies or software you need to install into your local system. So now we are going to create the backend with Spring Boot. So first of all, we need to setting up the Spring Boot project. So how we are going to setting it up? So we are going to the Spring Initializer site. Over there we need to select the necessary dependencies. We are going to add the dependencies of Spring Web, Spring Data JPA and Spring Security to the project for doing the necessary things into our application. Next, we need to configure the MySQL database. Like we need to open the MySQL database, and then we need to create one schema, like let's say blog, and then we need to connect this particular schema from the Spring Boot application. So for that, we need to add some properties into the application.properties file to connect Spring Boot to MySQL. Next, we need to create the entities and repositories. Like we need to write some Java classes for post, comment and user entities, explaining the what it will do, and also we are going to mapping the fields column name from the database to the entities. And then we need to create the repositories to do the CRUD operations, correct? Because without repositories we are not able to connect with the database, means it's actually doing all the things. I will show you in the practical example that how using the repositories, how we are going to achieve those operations like saving the data into the database, fetch the data from the database, these kinds of activities. And the final one, building the RESTful APIs. So for that we need to implement service classes that contains the business logic for handling data, and the controller layer. So here we are going to create the REST controller that handle the HTTP request and map them to the appropriate service methods. Now I have created this particular project from the Spring Initializer side. So over there I just need to choose the dependencies. One is the Spring Boot Starter Web, Spring Boot Starter Data JPA, Spring Boot Starter Security. As we are using the database for storing the data, so as a database we are using that MySQL. So that's why this MySQL connector J is needed. We need to add these dependencies into our POM file. Another, the optional dependencies, that is the Lombok, that is used to avoid the boilerplate code. Why we have used this one? Because for some DTOs or entities we need to generate the getter and setter, so we don't need to write those getter and setter manually. We need to use some kind of the annotation to actually use the getter and setter. So those annotation will come from these Lombok dependencies. So after generating the project and choose the dependencies, you can generate the project and import that particular project into your favorite editor. I am using the Eclipse over here. You guys can use any editor that is your favorite one. So the project wise is done now. Next, what we are going to do, we are going to defining the MySQL database. So that next we are going to add some properties over here. So now in this properties file, first of all we need to defining the database URL. So for that we are having these properties like spring.datasource.url. So here this is the URL that we need to define. This is the database schema that we need to create in the MySQL database. Next we need to put the username and password. Like while we are going to connect with the database, so we need to set some username and password. So that username and password we need to define in this properties file with these properties like spring.datasource.username, spring.datasource.password. So whatever the username and password you are setting into your local system in your local MySQL database, you need to give over here. Next we need to give another properties which will be responsible to automatically create the entities or table into the backend. Like here we are going to create some entities, let's say post, comment. So these are the entities we are going to create over here. So we don't need to go to the MySQL database and write the create statement for creating the tables. Using these properties hibernate automatically while the application will start, then it will generate those entities in the backend. I will show you while after generating the project. Next we need to defining the dialect as we are using the MySQL database, so then we need to use this MySQL dialect over here. If we want to means let's say if we are trying to fetch some data from the database, or if we want to store some data means saving the data into the database, so on the same time it will actually execute some SQL like select star from this table or maybe insert into this table M1. So if we want to view those kind of SQL into the console, so for that there is another property that we need to add over here. That is, let me add these properties over here so that we can get the SQL like this one is spring.jpa.showSQL equals to true. So it will print the means SQL statement in the console log while we are doing some operation. So these are the properties, basic properties we need to add over here. In next what we will do, we will create the entity and the repositories. Now for creating the entity, basically we can create one package over here. Let's say new package dot entity. Okay, so here we are going to keeping those necessary entities, let's say post. Okay, so this post entity actually having a this getter and setter. Okay, let me add the user entity first. Okay, so now it's fine. So post entity actually having this ID, it will be a primary key of this particular post table, and this is the auto generated. Generation type will be the identity, means it's a unique and the automatic will be generated. Next title, like what will be the title for the post, and then the content. And here also we are mapping that user, like which user basically do this post. Currently in this tutorial I'm not going to adding this user mapping with this post. Maybe in later on we can try to do that. So this is the one entity. If you see that we have marked this particular class as @entity to make it as a database entity. In similar fashion it will actually generate the create the table actually in the backend. And these are the annotation that actually coming from the Lombok to avoid the getter setter, right? Because we just use this annotation. So here if you see, we don't write any getter and setter method. Next we need to create another entity, that is comment. So comment entity actually having this ID, it's again primary key for this comment table, and it's a content. And here we are mapping with this post ID, means for comment which related to the post, like which post this comment is belong to. That's why this post ID is there. Next we need to create another DTO, like this is the DTO, these are the entities. I'm going to create another DTO actually, which will having the ID, title, content, author, and the list of command. So this actually used in a controller part to return the data into the front end. So this DTO is basically used to doing this one. So next we are going to create the repository. So for that we need to create another package. Instead of entity, it will be a repository. Okay, so let me add this one, repository. So what actually else we need to do over here, like under this repository, basically we need to instead of repository, let it repo. Okay, just keep it short, repo. Now here we need to, first of all we need to create the post repository, right? So here if you see this post repository, it will be extend this JPA repository, and this JPA repository actually having all the methods like this. Let me open this list crud one. Okay, so here if you see save all, find all by ID. So all the methods actually it's having, even this crud repository, save, then save all, find by ID, find all. So these are the already methods are available that we can use for doing the CRUD operations. So post repository, then comment repository we need to add. So this is also use this comment repository, and then user repository. So now this entity and the repository creation is done. These are the similar kind of pattern. All the repo actually use this extending this JPA repository, and this JPA repository having all the related method that we are using in our application. Means all the necessary method we can get from over here. So next what we are going to do, we are going to create the service for saving the post, saving the comments, fetching the details from the database, and then finally we are going to write the controller. Let me close all the open file over here. So next we are going to write the service layer. So here we need to create one package for that, just to keep all the things in a separate way. Okay, so here I'm going to create that service packages, services packages package over here. Under this, first of all we need to create one post service. So this particular post service actually having all the related necessary methods. If you see, first of all the find all post. So how we are going to find all post? So here if you see, we are auto adding this post repository that we have repository created. So this repository we are using, injecting over here. Using this repository we are doing the find all method. If we want to save the post into the database, then we are passing this post as an entity over here, and then we need to save the data. Find post by ID. So here we are passing the ID just to fetch the details. Then using this repository find by ID. So here we are passing this ID, it will return the optional post. Next we need to check that if the data is present, then only we are mapping the data from this entity to this particular custom DTO, and then finally we are returning this DTO. So this is the find by post, and then delete post by ID. Using the repository we can easily delete the data. So this post service actually having 4 methods: find all post, save post, find post by ID, and delete post. Next we are going to create the comment service. Comment service also having the similar kind of functionalities. Like first of all is the save comment. So how are you going to doing that? Like here it's passing the post ID and the comment, because comment is related to the post ID. Means while we are going to save the comment, then we need to also attaching the post ID, because post ID, without this post ID we are not able to validate that which this particular comment related to the which post. So that's why this post ID is needed over here. So just to validate, we are checking that post ID is exist or not. If it is exist, then is fine. else we are throwing the runtime exception over here. And in a comment we are setting the post ID if it is a valid, and then using this repository we are saving the data in a database. If we want to get the comments by post ID, then if you see, we are passing the post ID over here, and then we are finding all the data from the comment using the comment repository, and then here we are filtering the data. This is the one option. Another option, we can directly like find by post ID, we can create another method which will return based on this ID, it will return all the comments related to that. So that is also work. So these two methods we need to add over here. User service we can create for saving the user details and find by username. These two methods we can create, but currently we are not using these two over here, but we can create over here. So this is about this service layer. In next we are going to create the controller layer. So for creating the controller we need to create another package dot controller. Okay, so here first of all we need to create the post controller. So let me add this particular class over here. So this post controller actually having all the methods. So here if you see, we have injected this post service. So this post service actually having all the available methods. So first of all we have created one get mapping, that is get all post. So it will return all the post from the database. If you see, using this service we are using the find all post. It will return all the available post in the from the post table. If we want to create the post, so that's why it's a post mapping, and in the body if you see, we are passing the post as an entity. So this request actually pass like a title and the content, these two. Next, using the post service dot save post, it will save the post into the database. Next is the get post by ID. So we are passing this ID in a path variable, and then we are just find the post by ID. We are calling this particular method. It will return the post DTO, and we are returning from over here. This is again a get mapping. Another one is the delete mapping. If we want to delete the post from the database, then this based on the ID, this again it will be the path variable. We can using the delete post, we can delete the details from the database. Next we are going to use the comment controller. This controller actually having these two method, two API. One is the post. Here if you see, we are injecting this comment service over here, and here for creating the comment, here if you see, we are passing the post ID because the comment is related to the post. And then finally using this service we are calling the save comment. Here it will take the post ID and the comment, and then we are saving the details into the database. And next, if we want to get the comments by the post ID, that's why the post ID will coming as a path variable, and then based on the post ID we are fetching the details, because for the single post ID there can be a multiple comment, so that's why it's a list of comment, and again it's a get mapping. Similarly we can use the user controller. So if you see, this only having the registered user. So here in the body we are passing this username, password. ID will be auto generated while saving the data into the database, and it's a post mapping because we are taking the data in a body. So these three controller basically is needed for the current being temporarily for the now. In later on maybe we need some another dependencies that we are not using over here. As a configuration, security configuration, we need to, let me add this security configuration as we are using these Spring securities. So this is the security configurations class that we are using here. If you see request matcher, this one, this is the in-memory database, in-memory checking actually, because if you see, we are not checking with the database. So this is also we can add over here. So this is all about this block management system for the backend part. In next, what we are going to do, we are going to start this application, and then we will check that it is working fine or not. In next, we are going to create the Angular application, and from there we are going to integrate all the APIs from there. Now actually what we are going to do, we are going to just start this application, because the database actually this is the schema that we have created in the MySQL database, right? This is the schema name, but currently the table names are empty. Why? Because we have not started this application, or even we are not created those table manually. So once we'll start this application, then as per these properties it will generate all the tables means automatically in the MySQL database. So we just need to start this application. How we are going to start this application? Just you need to come into the main entry class. This is the entry class of this Spring Boot application, and we just need to right click and run as Java application. So it will start the application, and while it will start this application, on the same time it will generate all the tables in the MySQL database. You can also see the logs. It will print the logs of those creation. Like for the create table, we have the create table name. If you see in the log that create table comment, create table post, create table user, also it will add the constant in the table. Now if we open the database and refresh it, if you see all the tables got created over here, because it will auto generate the table in the MySQL database. Okay, so that means this application is started fine. In next we are going to, whatever the API we have created, we are going to create Angular application as a front end, and from there we are going to integrate those APIs. I hope today's session has given you a clear understanding of how to create backend part for block management system. In next we will create front-end application using Angular and integrate with the Spring Boot APIs. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. And as always, feel free to drop your questions in the comments below. Thanks for watching and happy coding. See you in the next video.